stars. Folks have been out here getting bold with what they try to pass off as real pictures, real videos, and real appearances. Those of us who work in film and television know about green screen, eyeline, all kinds of tricks to create layers of images, photoshopping in a fake background, having real actors perform against a fake background. And we have seen some questionable images since the first month of 2024. But how do you actually fake photos and videos and images using AI and Photoshop? Well, so there's a lot of privately available artificial intelligence, but let's explore what is publicly available as far as AI for images. Any of us can access it, right? It's a different process for video, but the more sophisticated AI available to the powers that be, it's a kind of different level than what we as consumer level people can access. And it's, common sense, right? It's like the way that GPS was developed for other parts of society, not for the consumer, but thank goodness we get to use our own little kind of dumbed down version of it. Just because you cannot see any obvious issues with a photo, it doesn't mean that it hasn't been doctored with a little Photoshop, a little AI, even if it's just, we know, from this platform, filters can help eliminate shadows, can slim the jawline, can make an asymmetrical face more perfect. It doesn't necessarily mean it's not at least based on a real photo, just that it's been edited well. Good editing won't show. Nobody sees it. Nobody knows it, especially on low resolution, small size, and bad quality copies on the internet. This is the reason why all the major photo competitions and some press agencies, if there's any doubt as to an image's authenticity, will always ask to see a raw copy too, the original as shot file. A raw file is a format all pro photographers will use, as it saves many details within the image that JPEGs don't, especially in the light, color, and shadows. If we know what the people, objects, or backgrounds and their details should look like in real life, and what the weather was doing that particular moment in that particular location, this can be another way to authenticate an image. The image shows a sunny sky, for example, when it was raining. Well, that's fake. The jacket someone is wearing has extra buttons or is the wrong pattern. Same. But most of us won't have the knowledge to know what should be there to compare it to what is there, particularly on a blurry copy floating around the web. And if it has been photoshopped well, then any good editor will have cleaned up after themselves so that it's hard to detect. It goes without saying that nobody will know if you are using a body double, as the photo will look right because there is no need to Photoshop it. So it is vital to bear in mind that just because an image looks right doesn't mean it is right or is authentic. What is more, a bad quality image on the web is even harder to see properly to examine as computers get smarter and AI produces ever more realistic stuff. This is even more vital to bear in mind. But back to how to make fake images, going with what's available to us regular folks. If we want to fake something, if I want to create an AI image, right? Something that looks like a real photo, I can do it in multiple ways or using a combination of ways. Number one, text prompts. I can go on to one of the many AI websites and give it a text prompt from nothing. Example, pretty blonde woman on a beach with a flower in her hair, or whatever. And it will create something for me from scratch to match that text prompt. Suppose I want that particular blonde woman to look like someone in particular. I could say, Taylor Swift on a beach with a flower in her hair. Some sites don't let you do famous people now, but there's ways around this, especially with the second method. And I can keep generating and generating new images until I get something mostly like what I want. The more detailed the text prompt, the more details AI will add in for me. You can get some pretty good stuff this way, but the publicly available stuff is not all that realistic yet, especially with hands and fingers and eyes. So the image won't look that right unless you Photoshop it after. Often the perspective is a little off. They don't look that real face on. The women tend to be out of proportion skinny with too narrow waists, too big eyes, too big bosoms. Their face is out of proportion when you compare them to real faces, but to the untrained eye, they look real, right? Just the way that we've been played with on all of the like photo and image apps around the web. Like, it took many years to figure out that the Kardashians don't look like their photos. The photos are always sweetened, always Photoshopped, always filtered, skin tone, waistline, and it's magical. The results are beautiful, but they're not photoreal. There's usually things that need correction, there's usually things that need to be corrected that AI is dumb about if you want the image to look real. However, that said, there have been AI images created of people with their backs to us, for example. That way you don't have the like vacant robot eyes and, you know, the fine details of the face, like the teeth and the eyes looking off. That's been a kind of dead giveaway in some of the video images that have been floating around. And they look pretty real to most people. And it required very little photoshopping afterwards because you remove all the detail of the front side of the person. What most people would need to do is get what AI has created and then hand tweak each small area in Photoshop by cloning, which means painting in something copied from another area or even another photo instead of cutting and pasting with some original images, which is exactly what some folks suspect has been done in certain suspicious images shared by the news media since the first month of 2024. You know what those pictures are. Number 2, picture and text prompt. The best way you can get what you want is to get an existing photo of somebody. So I get a picture of a blonde model and I feed it to the AI site and I give it my text prompt. Pretty blonde woman on a beach with a flower in her hair, or Taylor Swift on a beach with a flower in her hair, if using that picture of Taylor Swift or someone a little bit like her is going to work for the result that you want. AI will then produce a new creation of this person with the exact same proportions as my original photo. Body and face, but wearing different clothes and in different surroundings. If I superimpose the original image onto the AI creation, the person will blend perfectly into the lines. The edges of the hair and the eyes are the giveaway, sometimes the edge of the clothes and the hands, but these can be cloned and composited in, i.e. Frankenstein, the way that one particular holiday photo was, from my original photo onto the AI image and blended. If I hand blend it in Photoshop from my original photo and other images, nobody would know it was an AI image. None of the usual AI proportion issues when creating people are there. AI will make them too skinny, with too big a bosom, too large eyes, etc. After this careful blending, I will end up with a realistic photo that even most photographers won't know is AI. It will look just like my model. I can feed the machine sketches if I don't have an original photo, and it will create a realistic photo from my art in the proportions I give it. Just as I gave an example of doing it with one person, I can do it with a couple or with a whole family. There are also settings where AI will vary the image up from the original image by whatever percent you define it. So it will create an almost perfect copy or do variations. So my blonde model will not be in exactly the same pose each time, but will have roughly the same look and proportions. Number 3, the whole picture can be done in AI. The whole picture can be AI in this way or just parts of it. I can do multiple AI fills on the same image. So I can get an image created with AI or one I or someone else actually took with a camera. I can change any of the areas. This is what I mean by an AI fill, right? There was a filter on the clock app that you could take any photo and then it would fill in a whole background, like these very dramatic interiors or exterior landscapes, and it was interesting, but no one was trying to pass it off like you're really in a castle or you're really in outer space or you're really on the inside of a grandfather clock or at the bottom of the ocean. It was a fun little filter, if you will, a fun little way to extend your existing photos. But in this way, the AI fill can be used in very creative and also in some very calculated ways. Photoshop now has this in beta since a couple of months ago, and it's been used, and it is a game changer. It is so much more realistic than other sites. It's quicker, it's easier, and the image quality is better, more convincing. Suppose that blonde woman I have created an image of doesn't have a flower in the hair. Or it's the wrong flower, a lily, when I wanted a rose when I wanted a daisy. Or AI has made that flower out of proportion, or it just doesn't look very realistic. I can circle that lily in her hair in Photoshop AI beta and say red rose, or white daisy, or hat, or anything I want, and Photoshop will put it in, including shadows where they should be, etc. It looks amazingly realistic, and it blends without any effort in a way a digital artist would have struggled with before. If I have just done AI fills in small areas, I avoid the problems of lower resolution when blending and avoid anything else being changed. Photoshop also creates the same resolution backgrounds and fills as a high-end photo. This is a game changer. And this is how we're getting AI enhanced or AI created from scratch images that are super, super convincing, except when they keep toggling back and forth between certain artifacts. The eyebrows on one entire day, sometimes they're high, sometimes they're low, sometimes they're thin, sometimes they're thick. Now you see a scar on the occipital bone, now you don't. Sometimes the lips are fuller, sometimes the teeth are more perfect, sometimes the skin is refreshed and smooth, and then you see other images that haven't been treated or enhanced, and that smooth skin is gone. So part of creating a consistent sense of authenticity, it could be achieved by taking and using real photos, right? That would be a really, really strong option, especially when you're trying to generate and disseminate images that are supposed to be photojournalism. But when you veer into entertainment, you veer into the Kardashian Instagram world, you make the photos look the way you want, right? It's the difference between the Getty images of people on the red carpet wearing makeup. It's really jarring what real makeup looks like on real skin, no matter the age of the wearer. When those images are filtered or photoshopped, they look glorious, unattainable. And it has that kind of impact on people where you feel like, oh, my makeup will never look like that. Well, their makeup doesn't really look like that. But with certain questions that have been swirling around the world and the internet since the 1st of 2024, these extremely convincing, though contrasting, images from one month to the next, from one moment at public events to the next, it has created. There's one group of people who feel convinced and satisfied, oh, everything's fine. And then there's a whole other group of people who are like, oh, geez, not again. Right? I'm not going to get into all the specifics, but the way images released by the royals are so low resolution means they don't want you to look close for the telltale signs. Or if they do, they might be trolling us. Same for the complicit toxic British media, not printing them large and unusually burying the images in videos, right? So that you can stop and capture a still of the video, but that's not the same as getting an actual crisp photo, a photoreal photojournalism photo. You've lost resolution, it's been translated into video, and now you're trying to capture it, and you're helpless trying to analyze something that has been obscured, right? You can't even really analyze what kind of treatment that image has gotten because it's been done up too many times. You've lost the original, but you can't even get a high quality version of whatever they decided to put out. There are some real life examples of how real photographers use AI on photos, right? You take a photo of a couple, but somebody's wearing a dress that spoils the photo, right? So you can change the dress. Nobody would know, even photographers, unless they got the highest resolution image and zoomed right into tiny details, they wouldn't know. And even then, they wouldn't know for sure. And that's when high resolution images of a shoot are put out, not the blurry, low res stuff the royals / toxic British media release. Only the raw file would show where doctoring has occurred. Not everybody shoots raw, which is why many photo competitions insist on a photographer supplying the raw file so they can see that no cheating has gone on, right? It's like when casting asks actors, take a selfie today. No filter, no funny business, just send the raw, unaltered image. And a lot of people don't want to do that, right? It's like, what are the pictures that you take for modeling that are just supposed to be your face, your head and shoulders, your torso, your full body without makeup on, right? But there's all kinds of videos telling you how to do no makeup, and there's all kinds of tricks for somehow enhancing your photo, but then being able to present those image and then being able to present those digitals as raw, having them look raw, even though they may not really be raw. Another example, a group photo where someone looked really irritated, spoiling the photo of the others, right? There wasn't another image to composite over it, so you can use software to make the person who looks irritated smile a little bit, right? It looks like the person, it looks natural, nobody would know. Further example, a picture of a model, she looked amazing, it was the best of a series taken that day, but somehow part of one of her hands was not in the shot. In the old days, you would have just deleted that photo, but because of the new technology, you can create a new hand and utilize that best shot. It took a lot of effort because one of the things that AI is especially bad with is hands and fingers, right? There's certain photos we saw this year where the fingers were the dead giveaway. There's too many of them, or the hands were blurry when the sweater wasn't, and you know how these discussions have gone, right? You would never create a fake hand in a photo and try to submit it to any of the press agencies. But for the purposes of casting, portfolio, the business of modeling, fashion, etc., it's fine. Another example, an AI generated figure, but the clothing folds of the material looked too smooth, as they often do, and the shadows on them weren't quite right. So you can take that image that looks fakey fake into Photoshop AI beta, circle the items of clothing one by one, and change them. Sometimes doing each fold one by one, and again, you wouldn't know that the shot isn't real from what the final product looks like. Further, you can add or change jewelry. It's easy with AI now, right? We've seen jewelry go missing in certain videos, and there are certain images that have been produced that look like a certain person's ring is missing. You can add it back in, but it can, if not done carefully or by an expert, create artifacts that make it look like it has been retouched, like that piece of jewelry wasn't on that hand in the photo or whatever photo was used to generate the final product image, right? There's a difference between a real photo, the raw, taken with a camera, versus after Photoshop, after AI beta Photoshop. We've seen this most of all. You can easily change backgrounds with one click, so you don't need to do a green screen shoot, but you can make anything from a studio background to a beach. Before you could do this, but you needed another image of a beach to composite into your original, something that was in perspective with your models, right? It's not always easy, as we've seen. We've seen some backgrounds that looked nice but didn't look real, that looked like the wrong season, or given where the people were positioned, it didn't look like the plants and trees were kind of where they needed to be in the landscape, or it just didn't look quite real. But now AI has improved to the point where it can do it for you, and AI is getting better all the time. In the past, you had to go to great expense to find clothing and props and locations, and now, and this is huge for Hollywood and people who make narrative content on a large scale, it's unclear whether it's going to be necessary in the future, whereas you can, with a click of a button, get exactly what you want. If you want a castle, if you want a green lawn, if you want a wedding venue, outer space, you can grab it, prompt it, create it. And that's why we're kind of in this moment where some of these technologies are being abused in order to convince the public of things that aren't real, which is fine in a fiction movie or television show. But when it comes to news and proof of life and convincing us that, marriages are happy and stable, and that, people are healthy and happy and functioning, it can be abused, in my humble opinion. One thing that is difficult to do with the current version of publicly available AI is to create a series of photos of the same people in the same location that will be consistent enough, right? You think about how people gesture, they lift and turn their heads, their necks, the number of lines in the neck. If it's not a real photo of that person at their particular age and their particular weight after they've been through whatever, kind of health crisis or treatment, it's hard to calculate all of those different elements to make that person look realistic to now, as opposed to perhaps a photo that you're using from 1 to 5, 10 years ago. And we've seen those artifacts leave people scratching their heads saying, something doesn't look quite right. Also, with the state of the teeth in pictures of children, right? If you use a picture of a child who's lost a tooth and it's growing in and it's from 6 months ago or a year ago, try to pass it off as now, especially parents and dentists are going to say, hey, it cannot be that that tooth that was growing in way back then is still growing in right now. And we've seen what happens when you try to Photoshop teeth. You get second rows of teeth. You get teeth that look fake. Yes, veneers can look fake, but there's just certain things that current consumer level AI, even professional photographer level AI, not the military grade kind, not the kind that, I don't know, heads of state and secret services might have access to, right? It still kind of tells on itself. AI images are winning photo competitions when judges don't spot them. Some people have spotted them. Others you would never know unless you saw the raw file for comparison, and not all photo competitions insist on that. Rules in many photo competitions state no AI fills, etc. It has been a concern for years about AI's potential to frame people on film or video. Evidence that appears to be indisputable. Of course, that was them. The abuses in the adult entertainment world have led to some policy shifts where, certain AI tools will not allow you to base your creations on images of real people, real celebrities, right? I think Taylor Swift and some other women celebrities have been abused in this particular way. But, anyone is able to scroll their feed and see and maybe even celebrate some of the glorious, interesting, amazing AI images and videos that have been created. But what's fascinating and frightening, right, beyond the royal family, is just thinking about how this technology can be used to sway public opinion, right, on political matters. And it's very frightening. It can be used for good. It can be used to change people's opinions, right? We're looking at election season in the UK, in the US. We have heard about, different people doing different things, but sometimes nothing's as eloquent as a photo or a video. And that certainly seems like what, certain palaces were hoping for with issuing suspicious images. But that doesn't mean that we are convinced. And thankfully, we're able to be discerning in a new way to see when collars and cuffs don't match, when hair is in the wrong place, zippers appear magically out of nowhere, and when jewelry appears, disappears, second rows of teeth. And looking at, the condition of the teeth of children especially can be a dead giveaway in terms of what the origin photo was, right? The problem is we're actually teaching people who do the bad AI enhanced imagery how to do a better job. But maybe in the middle of all of this AI generated confusion, we will have new heightened powers of discernment so that we're not So very easily fooled. But let me know what you think, stars.